Hello, Amador County. I'm Tom Slivick. Thanks for watching TSPN's News for today. Let's take a look at our headlines. Groups show support for saving the Ione train depot from the wrecking ball. And crews work to move utilities on Broad Street and Sutter Creek to make way for a new storm drain project. CAL FIRE's new Amador Division Chief brings 23 years of fire experience. And Ione money woes could cause move of depot from the original location to the city corporation yard. And in the second half of the news, I'll speak with Brian Estes, Assistant Chief of the CAL FIRE Southern Branch of the Amador El Dorado Unit, including the Pine Grove concentration camp. So stay with us. We'll have these stories when I come back from the other side of the break. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Let's take a look at our stories. Ione City Council last week considered the loss of a 132-year-old Ione train depot building when a city lease runs out with Union Pacific on May 3rd. Colin Frost, founder, president, and CEO of the Amador County Historic Railroad Preservation Society, said he has emotional ties to the depot and a goal to acquire the adjacent 3-mile spur of tracks to build a railroad park and education center. Frost grew up playing in the depot where his father worked, and he learned in Sacramento that the depot is a centennial building built in 1876, and moving it from the original site would hurt the value of the building. He urged the council to mitigate lead and asbestos contamination at the site instead of moving the depot to the city corporate yard. And City Manager Jeff Butzoff said Union Pacific's intention remains to demolish the building. Thornton Consolio said the Amador County Historical Society is here to save the structure, and he said Frost both donate and pledge in-kind work from their organizations. Butzoff said estimates were $30,000 for site abatement of lead outside, $5,000 for asbestos, and $7,800 for lead on the building. Councilman David Plank said moving the building would require stabilizing the structure and still require mitigating the land, and the move was estimated at $40,000. Frost said he had received a lower solid estimate of $3,875 for asbestos removal from the traveling environmental specialist who is on retainer with the Union Pacific. He said the technician is ready to go right now. He said the lead paint could be encapsulated by painting it with rubbery paint. And Councilwoman Andrea Bonham said she's familiar with the electrometric paint because she used it on Clark's Corner, but the problem with the old buildings is that anything underneath the paint starts to deteriorate. And Plank asked if Frost could fund the work because the city had no money. Frost said getting a plan in place would help encourage donations. Councilman Lloyd Oneto suggested getting a 60-day extension on the abatement, and City Attorney James Maynard said Union Pacific won't give an extension on the abatement without a plan and funding source in place. But the city can say to Union Pacific that it has 2 groups interested in assisting with abatement, and Plank asked the groups for letters of interest and a basic plan to give to Union Pacific. And 6 work crews converged on Broad Street and Sutter Creek last week to move utilities for an upcoming drain diversion pipeline project to be built by the city. Pacific Gas and Electric had 2 crews, one working on moving power lines and poles and another moving gas lines buried under the asphalt on Broad Street. PG&E moved 2 power poles at the corner of Broad and Eureka Streets and also had to replace some bad lines farther down Broad Street. Amador Water Agency had a crew digging up a main on Friday in the middle of the intersection of Randolph and Broad Streets and was preparing to make a connection for a main crossing below Broad Street that they installed on Thursday, April 5th. AWA General Manager Gene Mancebo said the crews were all at the site together earlier in the week as they moved utilities so the contractor for Sutter Creek can carry out its installation of a new sewer drain, main, and pipelines. And Mancebo said AWA knew about the project, the planned and budgeted the relocation of the facilities, had a $100,000 budget for the work. They are relocating service connections and fire hydrants to clear out an area for the storm drain to go. They have to dig down about 8 feet in some places to make room for the drain, and there are lots of utility lines to dig around. Mancebo said they have a deadline to be done by the beginning of May, and in the next 30 days, AWA's crews will be plenty busy trying to meet the deadlines. Mancebo said they are going to be pushing to make the deadline and maybe pulling people off construction to do the work. They have a lot of pipes to dig around and cannot dig with a backhoe. He said it's very slow going and telephone poles are right next to where they are digging. AWA crews built crossings at several intersections and had to dig about 8 feet deep to make the crossings while their main was relatively shallow. And AWA and PG&E both have the goal to complete their gas and water line moves by May 1st so the city city can do its work during summer school break. The project sits down the road from Sutter Elementary, and Sutter Creek City Council in March approved a contract with Vincent Guerra Construction for $658,000 for the Broad Street Storm Drain Division project. And the project includes 1,050 linear feet of 42-inch diameter storm drain pipes and 1,750 cubic yards of earth estimated to be moved in trenching. Sutter Creek received a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for the project, and Mancebo said the Amador Water Agency did not receive any FEMA or CalEMA funding for moving their utilities. The new Amador Division Chief of CAL FIRE brings 23 years' experience, including apparatus engineering in Amador County, as well as helicopter firefighting, incident command, and training. California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection's Amador El Dorado unit pinned a new Southern Division Assistant Fire Chief last month. Assistant Chief Brian Estes is the new Division Chief for Amador County and was pinned with his Division Chief badge on March 5th by Unit Chief Kelly Keenan. Keenan announced the promotion of Estes from Battalion Chief to his new Assistant Chief in charge of Southern Division Operations and the Pine Grove Conservation Camp. Estes, El Dorado Hills, brings many years of valuable experience both locally and to the state level to his new duties as AEU's Amador County Division Chief. Keenan says Estes embodies CAL FIRE's ability to develop and recruit future leaders for the department. Estes began his fire service career in 1989 working as a U.S. Forest Service firefighter on hand crews and hill attack crews. In 1993, he was hired by CAL FIRE as a firefighter in the San Diego unit. In 1995, he moved to the Tuolumne Calaveras unit and worked as a hill attack firefighter on CAL FIRE helicopter until promoted to apparatus engineer in Amador County in 1998. Estes was promoted to Fire Captain B in El Dorado County at Growlersburg Conservation Camp. In 2001, he transferred to the unit's Training Bureau in 2003 as a fire captain and was promoted to Training Bureau Battalion Chief in 2006. In 2008, Estes moved to the Field Battalion and supervised the Amador El Dorado units Battalion 1, encompassing El Dorado and Camino stations, including AEU's headquarters. Estes has extensive CAL FIRE Incident Command Team experience as a Type 1 Operations Section Chief with Incident Command Teams 1 and 10. He's currently the Incident Commander Trainee for Incident Command Team 5. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from California State University, Chico. Estes lives in El Dorado Hills with his wife Kelly and daughter Peyton. Estes replaced former Amador Division Chief Brian Kirk, who left the position 6 months ago. And the Amador Division includes Pine Grove Camp and 2 battalions, 3 and 4 in Amador County, as well as the Amador Plan. Ione money woes last week compounded concerns about the lease expiring on the city-owned train depot, which sits on Union Pacific land. That is leased by the city, and the land and the depot have harmful materials, including asbestos and lead-based paint, that must be removed by May 3rd when the lease expires, or the railroad can have the building demolished and build a city. Ione City Council members lean towards moving the depot to the city corporate yard nearby. Councilwoman Andrea Bonham said it's never an ideal contract, but it was the only way to save it, or they were going to tear it down, and the council could get an extension from Union Pacific if they get a source for $50,000 in funding to mitigate the site and submit a plan for the work. Bonham said as much as they want to keep the building, it's in its original location, it would probably come down to moving it, and the timeline would be centered on having good weather to make the move. Mayor Ron Smiley said he likes the depot, and his vision is to see trains run to Jackson. He said it would be good to see if benefactors could raise the money, and he supported making a pitch to Union Pacific to buy us some time to raise money. We're not going to squeeze our budget for the new building right now when we're having trouble paying salaries. He also wanted to see competitive bids. Thornton Consolio said Amador County Historical Society has benefactors but also need to see a plan. He said the lease committed Ione to spending money, and Chief Manager Jeff Bultzoff said maybe they could get 6 months to a year extension by fronting gas tax funds to guarantee the money, but if we wait until we raise the money in our community, we're not going to get this done. And Bonham said she wants to save the structure, but not at a time when the city is talking about not having a swimming pool. She did not support paying the cost with gas tax funds, and Smiley said, I don't think there's any doubt that we want to save this building. They asked the Historical Society and Colin Frost Amador County Historic Railroad Preservation Society to write letters of support and asked staff to formulate a timeline for different plans with costs. Frost said Union Pacific needs an act of Congress to shut down a rail line, but the funding was there. They would convey the land to his foundation. He said they would rather give it to another short line service than abandon the 3-mile spur. And let's take a quick look at our weather. We have a 90% chance of rain with a quarter inch possible. The high 59, low 46, wind southeast 6 to 11 miles an hour. It'll probably be later in the evening. And on Wednesday, 90% chance of rain. High 52, low 41, wind south-southeast 7 to 11 miles an hour. On Thursday, 80% chance of rain. High 51, low 39. In our air quality index report, particular matter is good today at 39 and good on Wednesday at 29. It should be a burn day, but make sure it's commensurate. Give a call. And let me tell you that the Amador County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, that's today, will hold a workshop and open discussion regarding defensible space requirements in the developed areas of incorporated Amador County. The workshop will be led by local resident Wendell Pert and will include input from attendees, and it's set for 2 to 4:30. And that's going to be interesting. Now, when I come back from break, we're going to have Brian Estes. We talked about him in a story today, and he's the new Amador Division Chief. So stay with us right here on TSPN TV.